Being able to focus and not get easily distracted is one of the most underrated skills to help us achieve our dreams. How many of you guys sit down at your desk and then suddenly you have your phone go off, or suddenly you get an email and your focus goes away, or even better, you get onto Instagram and you get distracted by scrolling on cat reels? I may or may not be guilty of that. If you're like me, maybe you have this growing sense of frustration on how easy it is to get distracted. When you aren't moving forward on important goals, you feel overwhelmed, you feel stressed. At the end of the week, you look back and you've been busy, but progress hasn't been made. Why? It's because you haven't worked on tasks that are cognitively demanding, but instead you likely ended up filling your calendar with emails, meetings, and low priority tasks that really don't move you forward. So in this video, I'll share a number of ideas from Cal Newport, who wrote the best-selling book called Deep Work. If you want to start that side hustle, if you want to really do well in that exam that'll leapfrog your career, you will have to work on tasks that require unbroken concentration. If you apply the 5 practical ways to overcome distraction, you'll find yourself moving towards your big goals, because the opposite of distraction is traction, and traction is when you are doing something intentionally to move you towards your goals. That's from the book Indistractable. So the first way to overcome distraction is to schedule deep work in your calendar. Deep work will not happen unless you plan and protect your time on your calendar for it. In our world, we have too many competing priorities, and blocking out time to do deep work on your calendar a couple of weeks in advance, or even better, a month in advance, goes a long way. Scheduling time for deep work means that you can confidently say no to someone who reaches out to you and says, "Hey, can we meet at 2 p.m. on Wednesday?" You can now see that you block that time and you work around the deep work schedule that you made for yourself. When you do deep work depends on the type of job you have and what works best for you given your personality. If you're a morning person, you might start your day with 2 hours of deep work. Alternatively, if you're someone that needs a long stretch of focus time, you could have no meeting Fridays where you are not available by email and text or by phone. Cal Newport suggests that deep work is a trained activity, and the more you train it, the better you get at it. Which takes me to tip number 2, which is to train your brain to do deep work. If you haven't been intentional about deep work, then you can slowly train your brain to concentrate for longer durations. You could do this by setting a timer. Initially, you could start at 30 minutes of unbroken concentration. Then, after a week or so, increase that 30 minutes to about 40 minutes, and so on. This is like doing push-ups for your brain. The more you practice, the better you get with unbroken concentration. Part of the challenge we have today is the availability of receiving stimuli through scrolling. I have started putting away my phone on focus mode more, and by doing that, I'm training my brain to not rely on funny reels and other content on Instagram, but instead to be able to have that unbroken concentration for longer periods of times. Newport suggests that our brain needs to get used to boredom. Because when we sit in front of the computer to work on something that requires intense concentration, you're often staring at a blank document or a complicated problem. And our mind will go to something that's easy for us, like social media, or like responding back to that email, instead of just sitting down and getting through that boredom to get that breakthrough. Moving on to the next tip, that is to focus on a few priorities. When we attempt to focus on a lot of things, we actually end up switching between many priorities and none of them get done well. For example, we might be focused on building this YouTube channel. I could choose to also try to make content for Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. But I'm intentionally choosing to stick to YouTube, because if I try to do all of them, I'll feel overwhelmed, and even worse, I might not achieve traction on any of these platforms. The myth about productivity is that it's about getting more things done. In reality, productivity is a lot more about focusing on the right things and enjoying the journey of the thing you're working so very hard on. Let's move to the 4th way of overcoming distraction, which is to create rituals. When I sit down to work on tasks that require unbroken concentration, I try to do all of the small things that might make me get up from this sleep. So for example, before going into a deep work session, I make sure I drink water and also have a cup of water nearby. If I'm craving coffee or tea, I prepare that and have it next to me as I'm working. So that's my ritual. Rituals can look different for different people depending on your preferences. For example, you might choose to go on a short walk around the neighborhood before you sit down for a cognitively demanding task. Or you might go to a certain desk in your office, that particular desk or that particular coffee shop, to get that deep work done. It's a way of priming your brain to get ready to do deep work. Next, the tip number 5 to overcome distraction is to take short breaks. Now, this might sound counterintuitive and ironic, but hear me out. Breaks are still important. You want to have unbroken concentration, say for 30 minutes at a minimum, up to 45 minutes or even an hour. Some people can go even for hours, but I recommend 45 minutes to an hour. But after 45 minutes, you might want to take a break to give your mind a breather. Now, when you take a break, what you do in that break is critical. If you go back to scrolling on your phone, or if you go back to your emails and reply or just check through them, the problem with going to email, for example, is that now you might feel obligated to reply to somebody. And now that's a task that your brain has to deal with. Then you have taken away your mind from the task. Ideally, you want to take a short break without going on to a different task, even if it's a very small task. So those were the 5 ways to overcome distraction. A lot of the ideas, again, are from Cal Newport's book, Deep Work. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did as well. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.